Welcome back to Season 3 of Marketing Matchup, the podcast built for marketers and financial services who are doing the work, pushing the craft forward, and raising the bar for what great marketing looks like in this industry. When we started this show, the mission was simple. I wanted to educate, inform, and build community around the professionals who rarely get a spotlight. The marketers inside RIAs, wealth management firms, and frankly, financial brands were quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, doing remarkable things. Well, as for that community, we built it. It's real now. After talking to close to 50 marketers doing this podcast, Marketing Matchup is growing into something we're genuinely proud of. A network of marketers spanning the country across firm sizes, geographies, and experience levels. And nothing makes that more visible than when we hit the road. At conferences, we're seeing the conversations from this podcast spill into the hallways, the breakout rooms, at dinner tables, and of course, on stage. Which makes it only right that we kick off Season 3 the same way. We're opening this season with a special live episode recorded on stage at the RIA Edge conference in Nashville. Joining me were 3 veteran marketers who have been in the trenches and frankly in conversations with me at this podcast table more than once or twice. We have Michelle Winkles, who's Chief Marketing Officer at Mission Wealth, Darcy O'Brien, Chief Marketing Officer at Simon Quick, and Kayla Kennelly, Chief Growth Officer at Opal Wealth Advisors. We covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. The strategy behind referrals, how AI is actually being deployed in marketing today, and what firms are now expecting from the marketing leaders in this evolving RIA landscape. It was a lively conversation, a lot of fun too, and it's a great way to start this season. Let's get into it.
Our next panel, another good one, maybe a little more what you should do, but as I said before, it's going to be breakthrough marketing ideas from master marketers. And hopefully they will all speak to all sizes of firms. The moderator is Joe Anthony, co-founder and president of Gregory FCA. And somehow I've become a bit of Joe's hype person for his podcast, Marketing Matchup. It's a great podcast if you don't listen to it. Joe and panel, please come up.
Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Joe Anthony. I'm the president of Gregory. Alex might have missed the memo on our rebrand from Gregory FCA to Gregory last fall. No big deal. I'm excited today to be with 3 very sharp marketers, growth executives at RIAs of different sizes around the country. Today's discussion will cover some hands-on things you could do today, this month, this year, and some bigger picture questions surrounding the pressures around organic growth and marketing. So with that, I'm going to let our esteemed panel introduce themselves. And Darcy, since you're furthest away, you get to go first.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Darcy O'Brien. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Simon Quick Advisors. We're a $9 billion RIA based out of Morristown, New Jersey. We have approximately 95 employees, and our marketing team consists of myself and one other colleague. We also partner with an external agency who supports some of our paid digital programming. And lastly, what did I want to share? I work out of our firm's New York City office, and we have 6 locations across the United States.
Hi, everyone. Kayla Kennelly. I am the Chief Growth Officer at Opal Wealth Advisors. We are a little smaller, about $1.5 billion RIA located in Long Island. We have a small and mighty marketing team of myself and one other individual. We do also work with a marketing agency. I've been with the firm about a year now and took a brief hiatus to have my second child during that. So it's been a busy year, but excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Winkles. I am the Chief Marketing Officer and a partner at Mission Wealth. I'm going on my 10th year at the firm. When I started, we were about $1 billion in assets under management, and today we're nearing $15 billion. We now have a team of 8 on our marketing team, and we also utilize outside agencies to support our growth. We have about 40 or more offices across the U.S. and over 120 advisors today.
So that's really helpful context for everybody. So as you can see, we've got some sharp minds from organizations of different sizes and scope. And one of the things that all 3 of our panelists have in common is that they were the first people to wear the chief growth or chief marketing hat at the organization. And I think it dovetails into what Ted said on the last panel, where we're in the most competitive M&A market there has ever been. But I would also argue now that there's such a major thrust around RIAs, it might be the most competitive growth market in general. And so I want to start with asking our panelists, tell us a little bit about what does a chief growth officer or chief marketing officer do in terms of today, and how is it defined versus what maybe it started as when you first got pulled in there. And Michelle, you get to go first this time. Like, tell us what the day in the life of a CMO is at a firm that's trying to grow as fast as you're trying to grow.
Okay. Yeah, when I started, we were much smaller. I mean, $1 billion, I wouldn't say is very small, but compared to $15 billion, it's a very different role. When I started, I was working with one other individual on my team, and it was all hands on deck, right? So you're doing everything to support advisors, collateral, and brand and client events. Really, that's what marketing was, I'd say, almost 10 years ago. Focusing on B2C, right? And B2B and relationships with outside referrers and supporting advisors with their initiatives then. Today, it is so much more. There are so many more growth channels. There's M&A, there's B2B, there's internal marketing just to get recruitment, at your firm. There's prospect marketing, digital marketing. I mean, there's so many different areas. So marketers now need to think about all the tactics for those different segments and learn all the tools, in order to be successful. And tech for marketing, like in AI, has just evolved incredibly. There's so many different AI tools for marketers. So not only do we have to keep up with the marketing tech side, we have to keep up with all the growth channels and the strategies for that. So I think it's just changed incredibly, and we have to wear so many more hats than we ever have.
So Darcy, piggyback on that as a fellow CMO, how would you characterize the things that are on your plate as a marketer?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that Michelle touched on are things that I also experienced when I started out building the marketing program at Simon Quick. You have to start with the foundational items. So oftentimes people will ask, what's the marketing playbook? And the reality is it is very customized to where you are in your business's evolution. So when I first started out, I needed to build our CRM. So we had mailing lists, that we had a social media program, get the blog up and running, sales materials for the sales team to work with. Those are foundational items. And as we've grown in our evolution, you kind of start building it brick by brick. Okay, we have one system and process up and running. What's the next level that we can add? And really shifting our focus at this phase in our evolution to those go-to market strategies. How do we reach the people who don't know us? Build our brand in front of them so that we can become a compelling resource for their needs.
Kayla, you're in a little different spot than Darcy, Michelle. So you came on board and were given the title of Chief Growth Officer. I want you to walk through because I think there's a new trend to have appointed CGOs. What does that mean? How is it different? How is it the same for what our fellow panelists are doing?
Yeah, I joke a little bit. I did get to make up my title when I came, especially at a smaller firm. But there is a reason why we chose growth versus revenue. When I was looking to join Opal, and I've known the founders for 7 years since they launched the firm, breaking away from Morgan Stanley, Lee Korn, one of the founders, he said, I want someone waking up every day thinking, how do we grow the firm? And so it's a wide variety of what I'm working on. But I would kind of break it down into 3 buckets. So one is definitely on the marketing side. So top of the funnel, getting more qualified opportunities into the firm, brand, we're working on a new website, a lot of the fundamentals that Darcy talked about. Second, and this is really important, is more working with our advisors. So I meet with our advisors every week or every other week to talk through their referral networks, COI networks, kind of strategizing, making sure that pipeline is clean. I'm Matt in the audience, one of the advisors. He can attest to that. And then the third is the systems behind it. So at the end of the day, I think in hiring, in our case, a chief growth officer, it was because we're a founder-led firm, and most of the growth right now comes from the founders. And so it's a way to diversify that, where it's shared growth across the firm. I'm sure there's a lot of firms in here who started kind of from those roots, a lot of breakaways. And so that's really the intent, in the chief growth officer role. But it changes every day, I'll be honest. There's so much. And I think prioritization is a big challenge of it.
So now that we've laid the foundation in terms of what the team does, how they spend their time, I think it's really important because a lot of questions I get after panels like this is when is my organization ready for a CMO or chief growth officer? Or how do I know it's time to invest more? and you start looking at some of the common elements of firms that have successfully started that mission, no pun intended, Michelle, they typically sometimes make the jump before they have the all clear sign to have a lead marketer. And so if you listen to our panelists here, all three of them took on their roles when they're at the firm between $1 billion and $2 billion in assets. And I would say if your firm hasn't installed a leader of that effort, by that point, you probably should start thinking about it. Quick show of hands of the organizations here. How many of you have a CGO or CMO in place currently? High enough so I can see them. All right. Of those that do have a CMO or CGO, how many of them have been in place longer than 3 years? A smaller subset. I think speaks a lot to what we've seen, which leads to my next question. Why now? It seems like marketing and growth have come of age, particularly since the pandemic. What are you seeing your day-to-day? Maybe what did you see in the decision-making when your bosses appointed you to your roles that led to the C-level-ification of growth? And Darcy, you get to go first with this one.
I would be happy to. I think the reality is that private equity has entered the chat. So for many of us in the RIA space, we were very comfortable growing organically, and we weren't seeing a ton of competition in the marketing and advertising space because many of our competitors just weren't as actively engaged in it. However, with private equity stepping in, they have very sophisticated marketing and advertising programs that they can help implement with their clients. So for the RIAs in the space, investing in your marketing program has become critical in order to remain competitive.
And Kayla, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I think for us, we're lucky because, the founders pre-invest ahead of time in a lot of different hires. Like even when we built our office, it looked like a $5 billion firm versus a $600 million at the time. So I think investment is very much part of our DNA. But something that really triggered this is just the decision on how we want to grow organically versus via training and building advisors from within, instead of a ton of M&A and bringing on advisors with existing books, just like as we look to the future. And so part of that, you need an engine and you need to feed the advisors. That's a big part of my role is how do I help free up capacity of the founders so that they can pass off clients, just focus on the business. And then also building that engine, if you will, as you think about, our growth trajectory in the future, not moving into M&A. And who knows, that'll happen in the future because to get to, our goal of 10 billion in 10 years, we'll probably have to do M&A, but that was really the impetus for, I think, my role.
So Michelle, I think Kayla sort of alluded to the change in expectations a little bit around marketing. You're one of the longest tenured CMOs in the industry that I know, but actually at RIA, I think it's 10 years about? Yeah, almost 10 years. I don't mean to overage you. So how has the expectations around what you're doing every day changed in light of your firm's growth and what you're doing?
Marketing has now shifted to be a growth engine. So I think a CMO and a chief growth officer are very similar, except in my perspective, I think a chief growth officer is more focused on aligning sales in all of those different growth channels and making sure the marketing is supporting it properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the difference now with expectations is that we have to think about the future and where people are looking for us and show up there, right? So that means AI and SEO. And not just at client events or, relying on client referrals. We need to start thinking about what are our clients doing? And this is something I was just talking to the group about earlier is we're now starting to see a trend that our clients are validating our advisors. They're looking online and through these AI tools to see, is this portfolio really right for me? Is this advisor the best advisor for me, or is there someone better? And so we need to think so much more as a marketer about advisor marketing and our advisor's presence online, right? You can have a great reputation in your city or your town, but you need marketing to help you optimize yourself as an advisor online. I've had several advisors come to me now saying, look at what ChatGPT sent my client Thank you so much for creating a bio page for me online and for sharing these testimonials, because they are just so much more confident in our relationship now because they're seeing this. And so it's something now that we have to think about as marketers. I just hired a person full-time to focus on advisor marketing alone. We implemented a testimonial program just in August, and we have almost 300 testimonials from our clients. And we can't even keep up every day they're rolling in. How are we going to promote these in creative ways? And I can't even tell you, our organic growth lead gen engine has just skyrocketed incredibly because of testimonials and local SEO. Sharing those testimonials to those Google profiles, it's incredible. It's like something just to think about is now not just new business and saving time, but keeping your clients.
So Michelle, you're hitting on something which actually is really compelling. I think we're at a point in time where we have a barbell in terms of the demands of marketing. On one end, there's never been more pressure around creating brand visibility, like a big B brand, making sure. We just saw Mariner roll out their plans to launch a national brand campaign, for example. There are other firms trying to do that. At the same time, because of what you're talking about, advisor level marketing has become back in vogue, more focused than ever. So you have one end, it's the big enterprise. The other hand, it's the day-to-day individual advisor. How do you juggle that? I'm curious to hear from the panel here. Kayla, one of the things you said in our prep was you talked about how your founders really wanted to bring the brand away from their names a little bit. And at the same time, they're still dealing with clients. So how do you juggle that barbell, that the need to focus marketing on the brand, but at the same time, deliver for the advisors? Darcy, you have any thoughts there? I'll start with you.
I'm just sitting here like, oh my God, how am I going to do that?
Tell me.
It is a huge challenge. And as a small team, it's something that I think about. And what I have heard of other marketing teams doing is having like a bifurcated support, right? So there's almost like advisor internal marketing support and then go-to-market people. Michelle kind of touched on this in her response as well, but it's an entirely different strategy, right? What it takes to promote an individual versus the brand. As where we are in our evolution at Simon Quick, my primary focus is just getting our name out there. I don't really have the resources to create individual marketing strategies for all 25 of our advisors. So that is something I envision as on the roadmap for future growth.
And Kayla, how would you answer that in terms of, as you're getting settled into your earlier year in, how is that taking shape in terms of balancing those two priorities?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, especially because, our they want the Opal brand out there, which is really important. But I feel, especially in our profession, on the independent side, people buy people, versus the brand. And so I think for me, I've tried to work with our advisors where that's like a natural tendency where they want to be out there because it's difficult, I think, for some advisors who aren't used to that. And so, we support them if they want to do a webinar, targeting a certain niche. But it's definitely a challenge and something we're trying to figure out.
And Michelle, are you able to juggle that? And you talk about your advisors appreciating the ground level work you're doing, but how do you divide your time? Does your team take on different roles in terms of managing those two aspects?
Yes. The way that we've set up our marketing team is different than I think a lot of traditional RIA setups. Some, like I said, when we were around $1 billion, it was all of us both of us just kind of doing everything. And now what we've developed is champions for each marketing segment. So not only is there a growth path for each one of those segments, but it enables each marketing person to be an expert in a specific segment. So I have a M&A marketer, and she works closely with our M&A team and our integrations team. And so she can be really great at that message and that goal and the initiatives around it. Same with B2C and all of our client communications, any type of promotions around our services, our website, our social, testimonials from our clients. There's someone focused on that specifically that can nail down that message and those goals. Same with, now I have a digital marketing sales team under me with a BDRs and I call it BDA, business development advisors, specifically focused on digital leads And, they're experts. There's a prospect marketing manager for that, and all the prospect materials, because the message is so different. They can work closely with the advisors. And now, like I said, an advisor marketing executive that can focus on working with the advisors, especially integrated firms through M&A now. They're wanting to let go of all the things they're doing, focus on their clients, but also build their books. And so we want to be able to support that as well and get them online, like I mentioned earlier, so that they can be found.
So you mentioned M&A at the tail end of that, and I want to ask a question. Let's shifting gears a little bit. When you think about the role of M&A, whether your firm has done some deals or not, or maybe you're pre-M&A, Kayla, like as you alluded to, when you think about that, what pressure has acquisitive growth placed on the organic growth equation at your firms? And Kayla, as the relatively newbie here, you're starting from scratch here. When you start thinking about how do I meet today's need, also set ourselves up for the future, what are some of the things that cross your mind as you're building out the growth program at Opal?
In terms of for M&A or?
Well, setting yourself up for both the long-term, prepping for M&A as well as how do you juggle the now and later?
I think like right now we're working on a lot of the foundations. So, within my first year, we moved to HubSpot. We've outsourced certain pieces of the marketing. There's a lot like on the foundational work that we're doing. But also, like what I'm really focused on is how do we make, whatever we're building more repeatable as we add advisors, especially because right now our model is adding advisors, training and growing. And so, and I can talk about this later, but like one initiative is what we call Loyal Client Advocates, which Ray Sclafani, a coach that works with us, we follow his program of a more systematic way to get referrals instead of just hoping that they happen. And so this is something that we've been working with our advisors on the past year. And as I think about growth in the future is if this works, can we then, as we're plugging in new advisors, this is more of a way to know kind of like KPIs if, we'll get X amount of referrals per year. So foundational, but then also thinking more forward term.
And Michelle, have you felt the pressure of acquisitive growth in terms of adding up more expectations for your function in terms of onboarding, assimilating, things like that?
Yes. Definitely feel that, and that's where you need more people. You have to be really clear with your leadership team. Hey, if you want these growth goals, this is what it's going to take. What do I have to let go of? If you want me to take this on, what do I have to let go of? And I know that's a challenge for so many firms is budget for marketing people or marketing teams. So one of the questions I see in a lot of the groups I participate in is, how do you get more people? Because marketing, again, I can't reinforce it enough that there's so much that we're trying to do and growth is so important and retention is so important. So you got to decide what's the priority, right?
Well, it's a balancing act for sure. And Darcy, on your end, how do you manage that? Your firm has done a handful of deals. You spread out. And maybe the question for you is, how are you helping these firms sort of set up and get aligned with the Simon Quick name when they come in the door?
Yeah, it's been increasing in importance as we, started building out our program. I was primarily focused on the clients, right? The end client and attracting them. Now, as we're running more acquisitive strategies, we have to demonstrate to these firms and advisors that Simon Quick is a place where they can come and grow. And this really is a differentiator in the marketplace. So it's important as firms or individual advisors are going through their evaluation process that you can show them, here's how we're going to help you grow. We have a fully fleshed out marketing function. We have a head of sales. We have the tools, materials, and resources that you need to grow because that is going to be critical in their decision-making process. They're going to go to the firms where they know they're going to be supported and where they can be successful.
So good insights. I'm going to shift more to a philosophical view on marketing and growth for a second. I want a couple questions here. But before I do that, could those in the room that have a marketing plan for their wealth management or asset management business, how many of you actually have stated growth goals in terms of AUM, percentages, things like that? You have a target you're working towards? And how many of you that raise your hand would say that at least 70% of your organization knows what those goals are and what you're working towards? Good amount of handful, not everybody. But that really speaks to the growth mindset of a firm, there's a lot of firms that we consult with. You talk to certain people and they're lockstep and they say, yeah, we know exactly what we're doing. And then you might speak to an advisor who's a spokesperson and you can tell they really don't really know what the objectives are. So it hasn't really penetrated the whole organization. And so my question for our panel here, and I'll pick on Michelle first this time, is when you're looking at the ingredients for marketing success, how do you set up a culture for growth where people you have buy-in from the executives as well as participation from your teammates in the organization?
Oh, okay.
Culture of growth.
Culture of growth. Well, like I said, I think for myself, just setting up a team that has experts in each one of those growth channels, they clearly know their goals and we can work on their marketing plans. It's like not one marketing plan anymore, it's 5, right? So I guess setting up a culture is just setting a clear growth path for them, setting up clear goals and incentives, mentorship and sponsorship, mentoring them, giving them a chance to like share their ideas and understand my way of thinking, I guess, when I'm leading, and then sponsoring them, letting them try, their ideas and, you could fail forward and learn from that. So giving them the ability to become leaders too. I think that's setting up a culture for success.
Well, you hit on something I think is really important. You're alluding to experimentation. I think you said fail forward, which I got to borrow that sometime. But I do think that you need to trial and error a little bit because what could work in some cultures or organizations may not work in others. I alluded before we were prepping for this and talking about one advisor still killing it with live events when a lot of people aren't. I mean, sometimes you have to figure out what works for you. So Kayla, I'm going to twist this question a little bit for you because I'm thinking about you're walking in the door, you get to pick your title, you're the growth officer. When you're setting that tone for what growth is going to be about at this firm, what are some of the things you have around you besides the buy-in from the founders that is really helping set the tone?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I really believe that there needs to be shared ownership of growth across the firm, no matter what position you're in. One example in what we did, and this wasn't my idea, this was done even before I got there, was we every year host what we call a vision dinner, where we take all of our 20 employees out to like a really nice dinner and we go through the 1 year, the 5 year, and the 10-year plan. We operate on EOS and it's everything that is talked about among the leadership team in our 3-day offsite. We throw it all out there for everyone. And I think, one thing that we talk about is growth is good, right? Growth opens up new opportunities for people to get promoted, to go to the next step. And so it's really about getting them in on the fold and being super transparent on where we're going as a firm so that they can't come and say, oh, I have no idea what we're marching towards. So I think it takes repetition. And that's why I think this role, whatever you want to call it, is important for a firm. We're at $1.5 billion. So I think it was like, for them to hire this role ahead of time says a lot about the firm, but it's someone who, has that accountability to like keep reinforcing that message across.
And so to continue this thread a little bit with Darcy. So Darcy, you're in an organization now with people that name on the door aren't as involved in the day-to-day as they might have been when you first started. And how do you maintain that? Or how does the focus on growth and creating that culture change or evolve when you're going on to the second or third generation of leadership? How do you, and then now as a CMO, you get to sort of dictate some of that. What are you doing in your organization to make sure there's buy-in?
Yeah, it's absolutely evolved over time. When we were a much smaller firm, we had, how do I want to say this? We still have an incredible client focus today, but I think that a lot of people who decide to become financial advisors do so because they care about relationships and because they care about giving advice. They don't necessarily sign up for this career path because they want to be a salesperson. And that was this position we found ourselves in. So evolving into a sales culture was a multi-year process for us. And the way we started with, I saw a lot of you raise your hands around, does the whole firm know your goals? That was a big part of it for us. So every Monday morning, as we have our Monday meeting, the entire firm looks at our sales dashboard. Where are we in relationship to our goals? And we've set up firm prizes, right? So there are certain bonuses that the team gets if we hit those goals. So everyone feels invested in their success, even if they aren't like directly in a sales role. And then the other piece I'll tack on to that from the marketing perspective is that there really needs to be a fundamental shift in how you view marketing, right? You don't have like the business strategy, you develop it and then say, okay, someone go tell marketing. That's not how it works, right? Your head of marketing should be fully integrated in the business strategy and developing it with you so that the two can work in lockstep together.
So we're last few minutes here of the panel, I know it's gone quick, and someone asked me to ask this question outside, not on the list, but it's bringing real wheelhouse. Can you give us one practical example of how AI is actually working in your marketing mix? AI was a big topic yesterday, and this came up, and so I'd love to hear what you all are doing, maybe one specific thing, whether it's related to content generation or search, as you alluded to, Michelle. Love to hear something specific we can give our audience. And Kayla, I'm going to pick on you first.
Okay. I'm going to give a different answer. I think AI is amazing. It gives Brittany, my marketing manager, like 20 hands and it like replicates her, which is amazing. But how we're thinking about it a little bit differently is where is new wealth going to be created because of AI? Like you think about the Industrial Revolution, .com, there are winners and losers. There are new industries being creative. And so that's now what we're thinking about from like, how do we get in those rooms? And so we're testing out an event, we're calling it the Founder Circle, where we're inviting prospects of our COIs as a way to develop that relationship. We're bringing in like an investment banker to talk about impact of AI on firm valuation. And so like we're really leaning into the business owner and entrepreneur side, which we do really well. And so that's, maybe I just answer a little bit differently. Like that's how we're kind of thinking about from like a growth standpoint.
And that's what we want to hear. That's cool stuff. Darcy, answer the question in your end. What's one strong use case for AI in your business?
Yeah, so as a marketer over the past 10, 20 years, we did so much writing, right? If you're not writing blog posts, it's emails, it's sales materials. It was a critical skill. And then overnight, AI can do that better, faster, cheaper. So the first thing we've done as a marketing team is using AI on a daily basis to help us feed the content beast. It's not going away, and it's only becoming more important in a large language model environment. So that would be like step one from my view. And now step two is for where we're at in our evolution is really the agentic. Okay, how do I get AI to be like an employee on my team? We're two people. I need AI to complete tasks. So some of the things we're testing right now is how can we train an AI to do our RFPs? How can we get an AI to create sales decks and be responsive to feedback and generative going forward? Another idea I'm pursuing is can we create a chatbot that helps my teammates find marketing materials, understand, right? So how much time during the day do we just spend fielding questions from our colleagues? Oh, here's where you can find that. How can we utilize AI to just be a chatbot, answer questions, help people find what they need? Those are some of the ideas we're testing right now.
That's good stuff. And Michelle, I know you're doing a lot of things there. What would you add?
I love Darcy's answer. We're doing something similar. But to give one example, you can utilize AI, and we do this as a business development representative, right? So there's several really great tools out there that you can, if you get a lead, let's say you're like juggling, I don't know how many of you have this problem, but you're getting like 10, 20, 100 leads a day. I wish you're instead of having to like look up who those people are, you only have their name and their email. You could use an AI tool, plug that in, and then seconds get a full profile of somebody. Know who they are. Are they a client? Are they an employee? Are they a prospect? Are they a COI? Are they an FC? Immediately we know who they are. And if they're a prospect, we could put them into our digital prospect funnel. So within seconds, we have that information. We know exactly who they are. And we can use AI to customize our message to that prospect, right? Based off of what we know about them. We know these tools give you so much information. You know their alma mater, what sports they're interested in, what their favorite team is. And you can utilize all that information to build a more personalized, meaningful relationship off the bat. You can personalize your prospect, your deck, your conversation, what materials you send them in your drip campaigns based off of all of this material, and it can be all automated. So AI has come really far in that perspective.
All right. So good answers. We have time for one last question. And this is more of a big picture outlook. On the back of Mariner announcing their national brand campaign, we've also seen Corient and Creative and some other firms really make a push to try to have greater B2C recognition. From an outlook standpoint, do you think it's possible for an independent RIA or an RIA platform to build an actual household name in the next 5 to 7 years when you think about where the industry is going? And yes or no, and what's your rationale? What do you think we need to see to really catalyze names that have similar resonance to, say, the old school Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanleys of the world? Any thoughts? Anyone want to take this jump ball?
I'll say yes-ish. Like, I think it'll be, you used the word barbell before, more of a barbell of, you'll have a few of the like larger brands who've like really figured that out, but then you're gonna have more specialty firms who like really go deep on the niche standpoint. And I think like the breakaway space, I spent a lot of my career in the breakaway space. That's gonna only continue. You're also starting to see breakaways from RIAs, which is really interesting. So yeah, I would answer that yes-ish, but having kind of two sections of it.
And Michelle, how would you answer that? I mean, obviously, your organization's put a lot of focus on marketing. Do you think it's a near-term thing? We'll start seeing brands that really carry that level of recognition, or do you think we're still ways off in terms of having that breakthrough brand recognition?
I think we're ways off. I mean, I know there's mass consolidation and firms are just getting bigger and bigger, but like I said, I'm a true believer that people know people more than a brand name, and they want to work with people. And the types of prospects that I see come in, they don't know much about the name, but they really want to know about the advisor. So I'd say no.
So Darcy, I'm going to switch. The other outlook question I have here is, when you look at a trend or innovation that's going to transform marketing more than most other things in the next 5 years, what's one thing marketers and people are thinking about marketing should be thinking about in terms of potential catalyst trend?
I think it's some of the themes that we've touched on throughout this panel, and really building a foundation. So treating your marketing function as a critical function to your business and building out a talent pool, right? So that your marketing team isn't just a group of people who execute certain initiatives and certain tactics, but they are building a foundation so that you can be responsive and test new tactics as the landscape evolves.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have. Thanks to my great panel. Give them a hand. They did a great job, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Marketing Matchup, a production of Gregory. If you like what you heard, please listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.